losing every major environmental battle on a global scale. And it is bankrupting us ecologically. It has to change, or the change will come to us. The way we design our systems is broken. The Living Building Challenge is the world's most stringent green building program. The idea is to really push the design and building industry as far forward as possible and ask them, how do we design buildings and infrastructure that is truly good for both people and the planet? Flowers we like as a metaphor, because wouldn't it be great if our buildings generated all their own energy from the sun like the flower does? Wouldn't it be great if they only used the amount of water that fell on their rooftops and the immediate surrounding area? And if we could just be as smart as a flower, we'd be in so much better shape. We don't need models like we're seeing being built, which are basically building the Blade Runner community. In 30 years, they will be standing there like empty relics of an empire. There's always this initial reaction that it's going to cost 3, 4, 5 times the cost, and that's never proven to be the case. It really depends on what you choose to value. We don't realize that we're actually externalizing a lot of costs on society. If we actually weren't degrading the environment, weren't causing health problems for our fellow citizens, we weren't actually hurting our economies by choosing cheap products made from thousands of miles away rather than creating jobs in our communities with local materials. If we really thought it through, then building living buildings is actually the smartest economic choice you can make.
As I've worked on this building, all of the things that are happening with the Eco Machine, the water reclamation part of this building, the microorganisms, fungi, and the plants, it really struck me that I am an integral part, but I am not the being that dominates nature in this, that I am a part of a living cycle.
What we're doing is creating habitat for our species within a larger network of species that is life. And that's our mission. To think that we're designing things is a failure of our industry. The world's first living buildings are now built. This is just the start. The lighthouses, if you will, of where civilization needs to head. And hopefully someday this is merely how we build everything. And we have around 5 million square feet of living building projects emerging in multiple countries now around the world. So on Earth Day this year, we opened the Bullitt Center in Seattle, which you're all invited to come see. And I want to give a big shout out to Dennis Hayes, who you probably know, who was behind this project, and you can see it here. And we have our institute in the Bullitt Center. This project is one of our most important living building projects for a few reasons. You can see the giant solar array, or you can see at least underneath it there. But this is a project that is really changing the way people think about building in a few powerful ways. So, in the least sunny city in the United States, it gets all of its energy on an annual basis from photovoltaics. This is a 6-story Class A office building that has to get normal market rental rates, and it is a speculative project. This is not a vanity project where we threw tons of money at it. This is a project that has to pencil, and it is. This building has composting toilets on all 6 floors and no need for a sewer connection. 100% of the water in the building is captured from rainfall, purified in the building and used, and so we don't have to pipe in water from miles and miles away. We then process the water inside the building. There's a wetland on one of the roofs, and that goes into then swales in the project, and there is no downstream sewer and stormwater impacts because of this building, and this is in the heart of the city, right? And this building, while it is a very modern building in terms of its architecture and design, is actually operating like a living thing. It's naturally ventilated. The windows are responding actively to the temperatures outside and inside. The shading deploys. The lighting goes down and up depending upon the conditions. It's incredible. And this building, just so you know, uses about 80% less energy to begin with than the average office building. So the average building of this size would use about as much energy as a small subdivision, about 30 homes. This building uses the amount of energy of about 6 to 7 homes to begin with. And again, all of it is powered by the sun. So it is really remarkable. And this is just one of the many projects that we are doing around the world now, which are really changing perceptions. I can tell you that people are very curious to use the composting toilets on the 6th floor. And it's very cool. And of course, people are always scratching heads. Really, in Seattle? Isn't it kind of cloudy in Seattle? And as it turns out, it is kind of cloudy. But we have incredible technology in play. And this is the very beautiful roof that also helps to keep rain off of the sidewalk of people when they're walking by. Here's the skyline. Now, here's the thing. When people say solar is not ready, you can now point to something and say, really? Now, this graphic is kind of interesting because if you didn't start with efficiency, you would in fact need a solar array that would cover several neighborhoods almost in order to power the building. But we made this building so efficient and so elegant that in the end we needed only the area of the roof, right? Which is kind of the whole point of the Living Building Challenge, to say, instead of just designing whatever we want and then having impacts downstream and upstream, we need to understand the notion of limits and carrying capacity and work within what we have. So we start by figuring out how much energy we can generate cleanly, and that's our energy budget. We start with how much water we can capture, and that is our water budget. So we work backwards. So if you're in the desert, you have to think like a cactus, right? And here in the Northwest, you think very differently, like a Douglas fir. And we wanted the impact of this building to be like a Douglas fir forest. So we're very excited about this. And when we launched this, I've never seen an example when the opening of an office building, this is not like a museum. We had lines around the corner all day long of people wanting to get in and look at composting toilets and look at these materials. Now, just so you know, the other thing, I mean, there's so many things that's remarkable about this and all the challenge projects. We scrubbed the entire specification set of red list chemicals, and that's one of the requirements of the Living Building Challenge. We had to get out anything that could give you cancer. We are not interested in buildings that are less likely to give you cancer or make you sick. We are interested in buildings that can't. This is actually the first heavy timber behind that, the metal, actually, when you go inside, it's beautiful wood everywhere. All of the wood is FSC. 100% of it. There isn't a drop that isn't. Even the formworks and the shims behind cabinets. It's all FSC. Beautiful stair. It's the first heavy timber building in the city of Seattle in like 60 years. So we brought back more jobs for supporting local forestry that's responsible. And when you look up the staircase, we call the irresistible stair. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, to me, this is the start of a quiet revolution. Now, when you think about our cities, and this is obviously perhaps our most iconic city, we often think about these big buildings, but we don't recognize that most of our buildings aren't like the Empire State Building. In fact, the Bullitt Center is larger than about 90% of the buildings in the United States. And we've just proven in the least sunny city in the United States that we can do a completely non-fossil fuel dependent building. So just think about what that represents. That doesn't need a sewer connection, that is free of red list chemicals. This is a revolution. And if you think about something like the Empire State Building, in the past, there was this real pride that we could build such grand sort of structures that were tributes to our engineering and our imagination. But now we need to be thinking very different. We need to move from Homo sapien to homogenesis as a species, right? So we have living buildings now, as I mentioned, in a lot of different places. This is in Canada, this beautiful building here, which was literally designed to look like a flower, as rammed earth in the base of the project. It's very cool, a green roof. This is a project in Pittsburgh that just opened, tied to a botanical center, the Phipps Conservatory. It's another office project. We have everything you could imagine. Some of you may know this building. This is at the Omega Center, and this is a sewage treatment plant. Right? The most beautiful sewage treatment plant you've ever seen. And it's completely powered by the sun. There's no chemicals again. It's pioneering a different way of thinking about infrastructure. And we believe that every single act of design and construction should be beautiful, should have multiple uses. This is in upstate New York. Someone just asked. In Rhinebeck. And we think that even the lowliest of structures, like a sewage treatment plant, should have a positive impact culturally, socially, and environmentally. We have schools, we have daycares. This is an incredible daycare you saw in the video. Also, this one is in Vancouver. We learned lots of interesting things, like when this team was looking for playground equipment, they couldn't find playground equipment that was standard, that didn't have redless chemicals in it. It was crazy. We put our children in harm's way on the things they play with. So they had to make custom, safer equipment, right? And again, beautiful. And this particular project was built for no cost premium over a typical LEED Gold project, and will never have an energy bill or water bill again. We're using these principles now to inform whole community design. Around that daycare now, we're looking with this developer and the university that it's associated with, Simon Fraser, on how we might begin to think about this at scale. And when you start to think about it at the neighborhood and community scale, these principles, it in fact gets very, very interesting, and the economics change. It isn't just confined to North America. This is a project in Australia that just opened. We have an urban agriculture component of the program. They just harvested their first fruit in the building there last month. We're pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about that. We have projects emerging in Mexico, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Europe, Canada, and many other places. This is another one in Australia. We have a lot of Australian interest, as it turns out. Another university. This is a climate change research center. We do a lot of crazy stuff. Sometimes we're called troublemakers, but I think it's... I know I'm on a lot of lists of... people are watching what we're doing. This, for example, is a program called Declare. And just like we have a right to know what's in the food we buy, we have a right to know what's in the things we surround ourselves with. And this is a nutrition label. And we are pushing this hard in the industry. And we have just launched a little program called Just that I would encourage all of you to use, which is a similar paradigm to Declare, which says, look, it matters how you treat your people. And we need to be transparent so that if we're going to support organizations with our dollars in terms of the goods and services they provide, we want to know whether they discriminate, whether there is gender equity, racial equity in the organization. And we want to be able to make informed, transparent decisions, and that's what Just is that we've just launched. So if you have employees, you can have a Just label. All of this and more are part of the sort of rabble-rousing that we do at the Institute. Again, you're all encouraged to help us. I know there's a few troublemakers here, I've detected. True to Buckminster Fuller, we try to think like a trim tab. This is our magazine that goes out. It's free, it's electronic, and it's beautiful. And it showcases a lot of these ideas and projects, so please get Trim Tab and come to our events. He's watching us in an abundant, beautiful, joyous way. And again, I want to thank all of you for everything that you do out here. So take care, everyone. Thank you.